Travel is reopening in phases, and it's opening first in a drive markets. So particularly properties that are in the mountains, the beaches, open spaces are the first places that we're seeing, and a lot of interest. In fact, some of our absolute best are hotels like the Montage Palmetto Bluff in South Carolina. Places that they're actually almost sold out for the summer.
So you're actually finding a tolerance for staying in a fairly decent-sized hotel. That's somewhat surprising to me.
Yeah, I think that the reality is there's a tremendous amount of pent-up demand, and if you think about it, there people are venturing out to those places where they feel they're comfortable. We're also starting to see some air travel. People are getting more flights have been put in place by JetBlue, by Delta and American, and that's starting to happen. But I do think that those locations that have more space, nature, et cetera, are very popular. And it's also important to remember that a lot of properties are not opening up at full capacity. So they're doing things to ensure that there's appropriate social distancing and health protocols.
What about these border restrictions that we're seeing reports about? How's that going to impact travel going forward?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, because I think one of the things that people need to understand is that the travel industry is the world's largest service industry. And one of the things that is absolutely necessary for its recovery is to have a global alignment from governments, as you were talking about the EU, for example. And how do we have the right protocols so that we're able to do that appropriately? Because consumer confidence isn't only the pandemic, but it's also the ability to understand, what I can expect and the type of border closings or not that they're going to be in place.
Quickly, travel as we ever knew it, as we know it, or knew it, is it ever going to come back?
It will come back. It'll come back very strong. Our advisors right now, it's amazing. There are things that are counterintuitive. For example, we're a huge seller of cruises, and a lot of people have sensationalized that as never coming back. And the reality is those clients that have cruised in the past, our January sales year over year right now are up 7%. And that's with January of this year being a really great year. So there's a lot of pent up demand. There's a lot of people out there, and savvy travelers, those that use their advisors that have the connections and things, they're the ones that are actually taking advantage.
These border decisions based on science, and our science is showing half of the states are still in the first wave and heading up. That is not the EU's fault. I think that's the fault of management by the White House.
Let's get some fast reaction. Elizabeth Cohen is our CNN senior medical correspondent, and Aaron Bromwich is a CNN contributor and biology professor and immunology specialist at UMass Dartmouth. And so, Elizabeth, first to you again, not a done deal, but just given the surge in coronavirus cases here in the U.S., would this be warranted?
You have to understand why they're considering it, Brooke. I mean, we are one of the hotspots. It does make sense. They're trying to protect their own countries. And I think that this is really a sad testimony to the job that this country has done, the United States has done in bringing coronavirus under control. I mean, look, back in January when this was all hitting, the U.S. had the same opportunities as other countries to get things under control. And other countries simply did better. Their numbers came down. Ours have not been coming down, and it's sad that we're in this situation right now.
Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we were very quick to close our borders, and we saw what happened with the US being peppered with new infections from Europe. It goes back the other way. We did not handle our business here, and because we didn't do that, we now get put in a timeout until we can get things under control.
Let me go back to the President of the United States, seemingly at odds. You just heard the sound, right, from Capitol Hill today, seemingly at odds with top health officials about the ongoing threat. For both of you, and Professor, I'll come back to you, what do you make of all this?
I think this is an important...
Go ahead, Elizabeth. Go ahead. You take it.
Go ahead. Okay. I think that this is an important moment when we look at what the president has said about that things are dying out, that just isn't the case. Things are not dying out. The situation is getting worse, and he needs to start being honest about that.
You know, listening to Dr. Fauci's testimony today, Aaron, this is for you. You know, he testified that he's never seen a single virus with such a wide range of symptoms as we've seen with COVID-19, and that, you know, some people may wonder why they should be concerned if they don't have more serious symptoms. And so just with that in mind, and as you see more and more Americans hanging out, gathering over the summer, many of whom not wearing masks, not observing social distancing, what concerns you the most?
It's just we've had our focus on the people that are older with comorbidities, and we've seen the devastating effect the virus has had on them. We took our eyes off what's happening to the younger people, and I'm seeing pediatricians banging the drum, talking about what they're seeing in children. We saw the double lung transplant in a 20-year-old this past week. We really don't know what the long-term effects on the health of younger people who may show milder disease, but we don't know what the longer term effects are going to be on lung function, neurological function. There's just so much that we don't know. We're guessing right now.
Talking about African beliefs, there's a young girl going around talking about special package.
Did she tell you she used the
Now, I hear say now Ifa she used.
No, she mentioned white witch.
No, she mentioned white witch. Anyway, the producer told me, say this girl says that is Ifa. I don't know. But the point is, girlfriend did a video about herself, and she was talking about special packages for taking a man or your husband, or maybe being the side chick, doing a special package for a certain man. So you do this specifically for one person. You make maybe Tunde or whatever, and you do it for Tunde. And she's not warning people that don't mix the names though, because what is the jobs are done specifically for you. So this is your African education now. You're saying that we should do African this, African that. This is what they're learning with the African education. This is what their special package.
She's going there now.
Exactly. I'm telling you,
don't go there.
Don't get me wrong. Every spirituality, religion can be used for evil or good.
Okay. You know, when I grew up in a family of love and understanding, and then now, because my family was a very religious family, so we used to go to church.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah. My grandfather was a pastor now.
Yes, this is strange.
Breaking news. For real?
What is get out?
We've never heard this, honestly. Well, right.
Get out.
This is the best news I've heard this year.
Oh, no. Are you all right? Are both of you all right?
Okay, I'm bringing you home.
Are you all right?
You played into my hand. Your grandfather was a pastor.
I'm shocked. But my grandfather, my great-grandfather, is responsible for bringing Christianity to Africa.
Wow.
To Yoruba people.
Wow.
Him and Ajayi Crowder.
Wow.
You didn't know that?
No, nobody gives us this history.
Oh, gosh. I shouldn't have said anything.
No, continue your analogy.
Let's talk about this matter of special package, because if we are taking it back to African education, let's focus, because there are women, there are young ladies going to visit that woman to go and collect special package for somebody else's husband. They can be collected for Okuteo.
So
let us focus on this matter, because why? Okay, first of all, I heard that the woman even did the second video saying that people are disturbing her. Please, when you watched that video, what came to mind?
It wasn't new to me. Like, I know that in the university, the girls who were doing runs, at some point, if they want to upgrade, they go out and do...
When you say upgrade, what does that mean?
So, for instance, you are doing runs now. You go to meet a commissioner and he gives you 50K. You go to meet a governor, gives you 100K. You now want more. So you go and upgrade. They now start looking for prayer houses and looking for native doctors to do something for them so that they can tie the man to give them more money. It's business for them. So instead of just doing that 50K, 100K, 150K, they now want to start buying houses. And that's why I see a lot of them who are big chicks in Lagos now, they have their own houses. It's the upgrading. It's this special package they are using.
Christ.
So that the person who is giving you will not give you more. For them, it's strictly business and it's prostitution.
Special package.
I sent it to my partner. I say, you mad people, you go walking up and down. That's why you collect nonsense. I come and give us.
Now you go and walk your legs. Because
if you didn't use your leg to walk out there, you are not going to meet nothing.
Thank you.
I'd like us to put this in various perspectives. There's Kaya Mata. That's supposed to be aphrodisiac for the other room activities for a man and woman. there are people that are selling that one to help you spice things up.
There's brand
That one is
tashi.
There's what's brand
For the men, right?
What's that one? That one helps them to perform. Hey, okay.
Today.
Thank God the camera didn't catch that. Okay, there's Bantashi, right?
Bantashi. Yeah.
And now, so the special package is the one that is just to collect money. It's not to do other room matter.
We do now. How will somebody just meet you and be giving you money? How will the thing hook the person? It's from the doing.
Holy Spirit.
Either the doing or the eating.
How can we help married women to help their husbands not get in the net of these special package people?
Action. You have to be doing action 24/7.
Waiting, why not to kill us?
No.
Look, if your man has enhanced libido,
right,
and you cannot
perform,
what will happen?
Look for them.
So you have to either look for a way to reduce the libido, or
can you
look for a way to increase.
Is there a drug can do to reduce somebody's libido?
No, there's no drug like that, Mariah. I don't think there's any way you can help your husband. A man who wants to stray will stray. It's not on you.
Right.
Because there are men who their wives are giving them back to back to back to back.
And they still stray.
I'm in that position. So if he chooses to stray tomorrow, it's because he wants to stray. It's not because I've not done my part. So I'm not going to take that responsibility. The only thing I can do is to guide him in prayer. I don't understand.
Thank you about that prayer thing you said. Let us be praying positive prayers.
For our husbands.
For our husbands, for our spouses, for whoever.
If you have a husband who is not taking care of you, instead of going special package, pray for him. If it's not going to work, find your level. Because there's karma. All those things have a way of backfiring later. If it doesn't backfire on you, it's going to find your children and your children's children.
You can watch Your View on TVC every Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Nigerian time on DSTV channel 418, GoTV channel 27 and channel 47, Star Times channel 121 and channel 307, Play TV channel 801 and channel 190. UHF 49, Sky Channel 515 for UK viewers. Watch live on Facebook at TVC Connect and on our website tvcentertainment.tv/livestream.
And German politicians have been looking to the United States and saying they haven't seen that same level of cooperation from the Trump administration to the extent that you've seen it here in Germany, Brianna.
Yeah, no, we just heard, Fred, from one of the major experts on vaccines who said it almost appears like the U.S. at this point has kind of given up on really managing coronavirus when you look at the moves the administration is taking. Juliet, when you look at what the EU is discussing here, the New York Times is reporting that the U.S. would be lumped in with, for instance, Brazil and Russia. And then it says that European nations are currently haggling over two potential lists of acceptable visitors based on how countries are basically doing with the coronavirus. Both include China as well as developing nations like Uganda, Cuba, and Vietnam. So what does that say about how the U.S. is being perceived here in their response?
So this is consistent with a number of actions that have been taken globally against the United States. So now we often talk about a wall here, sort of keeping people out. They are building a wall around us. Everything from poultry exports because of the illnesses in our supply chain for meat, to the cruise lines yesterday voluntarily said we're no longer going to come into U.S. ports for a couple months because they see our numbers, to now the EU. This is the summer of exclusion is how we have to think about it. The United States has failed to effectively manage the coronavirus, and the rest of the country, rest of the world sees that, but in particular parts of the world that have managed to not only flatten the curve, but to get way down on that slope as they anticipate a potential second wave. So for Europe, they know it's not over. But what they can do is manage the risk between now and, say, October, if there is a second wave. The United States as a whole, every single citizen now is seen as a potential risk factor. And so it is completely, I will say this, rational for the EU to exclude us at this stage, given our numbers. I'm not happy about it, but we would do the same if we saw those EU numbers looking like ours and ours were in a better place. It's just the nature of a global pandemic. You have to make these border decisions based on science, and our science is showing half of the states are still in the first wave and heading up. That is not the EU's fault. I think that's the fault of management by the White House.
Let's get some fast reaction. Elizabeth Cohen is our CNN senior medical correspondent, and Aaron Bromage is a CNN contributor and biology professor and immunology specialist at UMass Dartmouth. And so, Elizabeth, first to you again, not a done deal, but just given the surge in coronavirus cases here in the U.S., would this be warranted?
You know, you have to understand why they're considering it, Brooke. I mean, we are one of the hotspots. It does make sense. They're trying to protect their own countries. And I think that this is really a sad testimony.
To hear a final decision on this early next week ahead of the July 1st deadline. And Fred, you're there in Berlin. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that is something that could happen, that the U.S. travelers could still be barred from entering the European Union. I mean, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that when the European Union opens, first of all, it's every member state's own thing, which people from which countries it lets in. But of course, the EU is going to want to do all of this on a European level. They want to see to be having a common approach, and that's something that they've done in the past as well. And certainly, the thing that they are going to look at is how strong the virus is in a lot of these countries. In the end, the science in the EU here is what it comes down to. What they usually do is they will give preferential treatment to countries that are affiliated with the European Union. Like, for instance, right now, travelers from the United Kingdom are being let into the European Union, and, for instance, also from Norway and some other countries. So even some countries that are not necessarily part of that Schengen area, of that common European free travel area, are allowed in. However, Brianna, one of the things that I have heard from many German officials over the past months that we've been dealing with this coronavirus crisis is they haven't been very impressed at the way that the Trump administration has been dealing with the coronavirus crisis. In fact, it was a top German official who a while back ago said, look, here in Germany, of course, Germany has done very well by and large in dealing with the crisis. We can be very happy that we don't have a situation like in the United States, where there's a lot of German politicians who believe that the crisis is not fully under control in the United States. Of course, that's also something that plays into these decisions as well. If you look at Germany, for instance, it is probably the European country that is most similar to the U.S. as far as politically structured. Also, a lot of strong federalism. And Angela Merkel's government has been seen as being very, very strong in dealing with state governors, working with state governors to try and get this crisis under control, get the pandemic under control. And German politicians have been looking to the United States and saying they haven't seen that same level of cooperation from the Trump administration to the extent that you've seen it here in Germany, Brianna.
Yeah, no, we just heard, Fred, from one of the major experts on vaccines who said it almost appears like the U.S. at this point has kind of given up on really managing coronavirus when you look at the moves the administration is taking. Juliet, when you look at what the EU is discussing here, the New York Times is reporting that the U.S. would be lumped in with, for instance, Brazil and Russia. And then it says that European nations are currently haggling over two potential lists of acceptable visitors based on how countries are basically doing with the coronavirus. Both include China as well as developing nations like Uganda, Cuba, and Vietnam. So what does that say about how the U.S. is being perceived here in their response?
So this is consistent with a number of actions that have been taken globally against the United States. So now we often talk about a wall here, sort of keeping people out. They are building a wall around us. Everything from poultry exports because of